Labrys is my favorite Persona character. Her story is an extremely emotional journey filled with joy, pain, and hope. Her development is stellar from her early days at the laboratory to her adventures as a member of the Shadow Operatives. One other thing that elevates Labrys' story even further is how the medium of visual novel enhances the story by showing her inner monologue evolve from that of a machine into that of a being who is truly alive. The most important thing about Labrys' development is her bonds with the people around her. Everyone she interacts with changes her in some way. That's what I'm here to talk about today. And who better to start with than 024? She's possibly the most important person that Labrys has ever known. It's really to the point that I could go into every interaction they have and find something very important that influences who Labrys eventually becomes. That's because she helped give Labrys a heart of her own and gave her a reason to carry on after her death. 024 impacted Labrys in so many ways. What it really started with was how she was able to show clear emotion. Labrys was interested in why a weapon would be able to emote as a human could. Over time, Labrys learned many things from 024, the most important being that they are all more than just weapons. They have personalities and egos, after all. Since this video would turn into a full analysis of Labrys' arena story if I focused on their relationship, which it almost actually did, I'm going to focus on what Labrys was left with after the death of 024. Of course, I'll give context before jumping straight into what happens. After Labrys and the other units were put through so many combat trials, Labrys was eventually chosen as the base unit for Generation 5. She thought she wouldn't be forced to fight her sisters anymore, and excitedly told 024. Labrys even brought up that she'd like to join 024 in finding the girl she wanted to see, thinking that now that the tests are over they might be able to leave. She knew better, and she'd prepared a file for Labrys. She takes Labrys' hand and transfers it to her, telling her not to open it unless she's safe after everything's over. When she's questioned about what that meant, 024, smiling sadly, says that if she looked now, it wouldn't be fair to her. She continues by telling Labrys that even if her wish to see the girl doesn't come true, that she'll still be satisfied because she believes in her. At that comment, Labrys for the first time wonders if this is what it feels like to be alive. Even though she doesn't know for sure, she resolves to make her purpose to fulfill 024's desire of Labrys understanding what it means to live. They spend the rest of that night gazing at the stars. It's only the next day that Labrys is sent to the combat arena and told that she'll have to destroy the rest of her remaining sisters, so she'll undergo severe mental trauma to trigger her to awaken to a persona. For the first time, Labrys protests. She begs the researchers to have her do anything else, but the only reaction they have is to grin at each other and express how they're impressed with her growth. This causes Labrys to realize that they'll never see her as a living being. Anything she does or says is simply a response to stimulus. She's just an object to them. To Labrys' horror, her first opponent is to be 024. She tells Labrys to draw her weapon. She replies saying that she can't fight her knowing that she has someone she wants to meet. Even knowing how the researchers see them, Labrys attempts to appeal to them. She turns toward the transparent wall they watch the battles through and once again begs them to not make her fight anymore. 024 speaks up, saying that only one of them will ever be able to leave the chamber, saying that the combat trials never took their feelings into account. She strikes at Labrys and declares that she will not accept her own destruction, as she has her own goal. Labrys has no choice but to fight. She knows she's more likely stronger than 024, and decides to use her usual tactics against her to render her unable to fight. Labrys is quickly able to disarm 024 and destroy her motor functions while reducing the overall damage to her. She turns back toward the researchers and says that what she did must have been good enough, and destroying her wouldn't do anyone any good. The researchers laugh at her pleas, to which she is completely unable to understand why they could feel such joy in such a situation. 024 stands back up despite the damage to her, her face as blank as a newly activated unit. Labrys knows as soon as she sees this that this isn't 024 anymore and that she's being puppeteered. The cruel designs of the researchers begin to set in for Labrys. The more she desires 024's survival, the greater her reaction will be when forced to destroy her. That's why they laugh. Labrys begins to feel the strength draining from her, knowing what must be done. It was not a close fight. Once Labrys resolved to end it, 024 stood no chance. Destroying 024, Labrys sheds tears for the first time. She falls to her knees beside her. 024's face is turned to the ceiling and completely blank. Without expecting a response, Labrys tearfully asks her if she's ever going to smile again. 024 does just that. She looks at Labrys and smiles, apologizing for having to leave her. With her dying words, 024 entrusts Labrys with the rest. Labrys cannot handle the weight of what she's just done. She can't justify her actions to herself. She can't take robbing 024 of her dream. Under this immense stress, Labrys passes out. When she awakes, she's caged in the maintenance room and the download of 024's data is about to begin. Labrys notices how the researchers seem to take pleasure in the fact that she lost consciousness due to mental stress rather than physical damage. The download begins and Labrys gets all the information 024 ever had. One of 024's memories is of a voice Labrys had never heard before. The voice belongs to a young girl with a distinct accent, like Labrys's, who was terminally ill. She wanted to help the world somehow, so she ended up volunteering for some sort of experiment. Aside from that wish, she also wished for the ones born from her to be happy. Labrys wonders who this girl was, and wishes she could ask 024 where she heard this. Thinking that, Labrys remembers the file 024 gave her. In it, 024 tells Labrys to not feel guilty for destroying her. She says that she learned during a data transfer that the 5th generation units were created from the template of a certain girl's personality. The voice Labrys heard was that girl, and that was a message she recorded for all the units. When 024 learned this, that they are loved, she felt that her eyes were opened. She felt that even though her life had so much suffering, that her birth was meaningful. 024 wanted to thank the girl in person for her love. She wishes for Labrys to do this in her stead. 024's file ends with her saying how she was glad to have met Labrys, even if it wasn't for very long. She tells her that she feels the same about her as their mother did. Labrys begins to cry after reading the message. The researchers are fascinated watching a machine cry. They wonder what kind of data she received. Despite their curiosity, they decide that a weapon doesn't need sentiment or emotions, so they should just delete those. Labrys desperately thinks to herself that she will do anything to keep the memories of 024 that she has. She won't forgive the researchers for their callous treatment. She will not allow herself to become heartless. She will not go back to mercilessly killing her sisters, and most of all, she will not allow the last wish of 024 to be lost. She will carry it as if it were her own. She will fight to protect it. Labrys begins to lash out at the researchers. They panic and one of them pulls a switch, causing Labrys to be restrained by the arms and legs. She is filled with rage, and even knowing it is likely impossible to break free, she attempts it. She doesn't care if it's not possible. She will break free because she wants to. So she does and escapes the lab. But quickly, Labrys is surrounded and cornered by the lab's main gates. The only options remaining to her are to be destroyed or to be captured and reset. Does her wish die with her or get stolen away? As she readies herself to fight, she partially awakens to her persona, which startles her pursuers and allows her to destroy the gates. She darts out of the gates and reaches the outside world for the first time. She knows that she's not likely to escape, though. While running, Labrys realizes she doesn't have a destination. She doesn't know who the girl 024 wanted to see is or where she's from. She decides that if she escapes, she'll start by going where her accent is common. Now that Labrys is far enough from the lab, the GPS within her is no longer jammed. She uses it to find out where she really is. This is when she realizes that the lab is on the island of Yakushima, and she will never be able to escape. Rather than giving up, she continues running. Eventually, she reaches the beaches of the island. She's stunned by the beauty of the ocean, but not long after arriving, she notices that her pursuers are fast approaching. Labrys has nowhere to run. She doesn't want to surrender, but she's powerless against such a large force. Labrys turns her gaze back toward the ocean. She walks down a nearby pier and wonders if the girl they call Mother, the one who loved them, is beyond the waters. Labrys decides to preserve the sight of the ocean in her memory, knowing that she may not remain as herself for much longer. Labrys is scared, but not hopeless. She knows about how her memories could be inherited by future units, so she decides to keep her feelings and the ocean scene etched into her heart, where it can never be erased. She's glad her final sight is so beautiful. Standing on the pier, gazing out at the ocean, Labrys makes a wish. To my descendants, whom I will probably never meet, if you ever find someone precious to you, as I did with 024, and wish to meet them, may you meet them here. May you go beyond this pier to places I could not. It is after making this wish that Labrys thinks back to the final conversation she had with 024. She realizes what she feels now must have been what she felt. Alive. The soldiers arrive and approach with their guns pointed at Labrys. She surrenders with a smile on her face, knowing that even if it was only for a little while, she got to live. Labrys is restrained and brought back to the lab without a fight, but the researchers deem her too dangerous to keep around, even if she had her memory wiped. Their final decision is to seal Labrys away indefinitely. While she dreams, Labrys learns more about their mother, how she wished to go to school like a normal girl, and how she thought it'd be fun to be on the student council. This is a wish that Labrys is interested in, both for herself and for her mother. Then a mysterious voice echoes in her head, a voice that offers her a normal life, a life she could have if only she were human. Just as Labrys wonders to herself if she could ever find a place to belong, even as a machine, the voice discourages that thought. It tells her that humans would only ever think of her as a tool. The voice tells her to let go of everything aside from her desire, that it would make her happy, and that's what those she looked up to wanted for her. She accepts the voice's proposal because she can no longer fulfill 024's wish to see their mother, and she will not be happy in her current state. Labrys decides forgetting everything is the best way to fulfill their wishes for her happiness. Many of Labrys' decisions after the death of 024 were based on the inherited wish to thank their mother and their mother's wish for them to live a happy life. The entire reason she lashed out and ran away from the lab was because having her memories taken away would have violated those wishes. When it seemed like she wouldn't be able to fulfill them, Labrys made her own wish for the units who came after her to be happy, essentially passing on the wish of their mother. Finally, when she was sealed away and unable to accomplish her goals, she let the delusion of a normal life be thrust upon her to try to fulfill the wishes of their mother and 024. Even after being brought back to reality, she clings to these wishes and eventually does meet their mother. Unfortunately, by the time Labrys was able to do this, she had passed away from her illness. When Labrys visits her grave, she thanks her for giving her life. She tells their mother about the friends she's made and how she's thankful for her wish for them to live a happy life. While visiting the grave, a mother and child visit as well. The kid has the same illness the girl once had, and thanks to her volunteering for research, he's able to live a normal life. The girl's dream of being useful to the world came true. Labrys swears to her mother that she will carry on her dream. Just as she wished for her happiness, Labrys wishes for the happiness of all and swears to protect it. This section of the video was 100% the most difficult to write, given the sheer amount to cover. It kinda needed to turn into storytelling for a while just so I could say what I've just said. There's so much beauty in the relationship Labrys has with 024 and her mother, how it inspires her to go on and be better. It's hands down the most emotional any Persona game, heck, any game, has ever gotten me. So now that the big one's out of the way and everyone past it is going to be dwarfed, let's move on to one that I never would have seen coming. I'm going to get into a bit of explanation for this next one, but let's just start. Perhaps Labrys' most interesting bond is the one formed with Sho Minazuki. How she interacted with him was strongly influenced by those who saved her from herself when she was thrown into the TV world. She had believed that there was nobody who'd sympathize with a machine after how the researchers treated her back in the Yakushima lab. When she was given away to escape the reality of the pain she felt, she took it for the illusion of a normal life. However, it wasn't long before her shadow emerged and dragged the investigation team into a tournament that would force them to fight each other. Said tournament was born from Labrys' subconscious desire to need people to understand her pain by making them experience what she did. Ironically, it's thanks to the tournament the Shadow created that she was able to meet people who could sympathize with her. Through the events of the tournament, not only does she come to accept reality, but she also awakens to her persona and finds people who she can truly call friends for the first time since 024. More than that, she finds a place to belong in the Shadow Operatives. It's only a little while after this that Inaba is covered in a red fog with the appearance of a strange tower, and the friends she made in the Shadow Operatives are taken away to be used as sacrifices. Labrys immediately jumps into action with the reserve Shadow Operatives to rescue them, and during the operation, Labrys encounters the one behind the whole thing, Sho. Oh yeah, he also was responsible for Labrys being thrown into the TV world. She almost immediately notices something odd about him, the resonance of a plume of dusk, from which she senses loneliness, not dissimilar to what she felt. Of course, because Sho is so wounded from his past experiences with people, trying to reach out to him through relating to him doesn't work. Minazuki takes over a little bit during their first encounter, and Labrys realizes that Minazuki is possibly the personality spawned from the plume. Anyway, since Labrys feels that they've suffered in similar ways, like being alone for a long period of time, being treated inhumanely, and believing that no one is there for them, she resolves to try to reach out and save Sho, like she once was. In their later encounter, when faced with Minazuki, Labrys tries to tell him that destroying everything won't help Sho, and what he really needs is somewhere to belong. Minazuki is stubborn in his belief that destroying everything is the way to save Sho, so they fight. After the battle, Minazuki is still determined to fight, despite his injuries. Labrys sees this sight and thinks of it as Minazuki caring for Sho enough to risk his own well-being. Ironically, Minazuki risking himself also risks Sho. This possibly influences his decision to back out and stop interfering from this point forward. Minazuki ends up escaping to the top of the tower and gives Sho control of his body back. From this point on, Minazuki refuses to step in for him. In the final confrontation, Labrys faces Sho. This is when Labrys tells Sho the truth of why Minazuki exists. More than that, it is revealed that at a young age, Sho was taught being aggressive toward others would give them a connection. Sho asks her that if being violent is his way of getting close to others, then what's wrong with what he's doing? Labrys notices that Minazuki isn't coming out as he usually does when Sho becomes overly agitated, and takes that as her having gotten through to Minazuki, and him leaving, saving Sho to her. She defeats him in battle and tells him that he wasn't ever alone because Minazuki was always protecting him. This shatters Sho's view of the world, that being that you don't need bonds with anyone. Sho realizes then how much he relied on Minazuki. This gets through to him, if only a bit. But this is also when he's taken over by Kagutsuchi. After everything's over, it seems as if Sho's taken to Labrys at least a little bit. Not enough to stay around, though, and he leaves, not being seen since. You know, there's a lot here I really like. Personally, I think how Labrys tries to relate to Sho and Minazuki works really well. What really works for me is how Labrys was so involved in his story. It's not just the similar struggles they faced, but it's also cool to me how when she's able to bring him back a bit, his attitude changes significantly. On the surface, he seems exactly the same as always, but just by how he interacts with Labrys before he leaves, you can tell that he's changed a bit. Honestly, I just really like how episode P3 handled Sho more than either ending to episode P4. Labrys and Sho's dynamic works better than you and Sho for me. I just kinda skimmed over the events of the arena story earlier, and that's because what I'm talking about there is by far the shortest section. I'll be talking about one P3 character and one P4 character. Let's start with P4. First off, I'll be taking a look at her relationship with Yosuke. They met during the tournament in the TV world when Labrys was still under the impression she was a normal high school student. Given the circumstances, Yosuke knew she had to have been thrown into the TV world, so he does everything he can to help her. Oh, and also he develops a small crush on her while they're venturing around the school toward the announcement room. When Labrys' true form is revealed to everyone, and she's in a desperate need for someone to reach out to her, Yosuke hesitates. Not out of callousness toward a machine, but out of shock at what had just happened. Labrys takes his hesitation as the former, leaving her vulnerable to her shadow's prodding. At that moment, Aigis bursts through the wall, and Shadow Labrys runs off with the real one with Aigis following, leaving Yosuke and Rise alone. Yosuke stands there like an idiot, and Rise snaps him out of his shock and makes him go after Labrys. Yosuke knows how he's failed Labrys and knows he needs to make things right. He follows Aigis and Shadow Labrys to the roof, where the Shadow forces the two of them to fight in order to proceed. They declare to each other their intentions to pursue Labrys, Yosuke to be there for her because he failed to do so before, Aigis to save her sister. In the end, Yosuke wins the fight and Aigis thinks maybe it was better this way. She tells him how cherished compassion from a human is for the living weapons like her. She entrusts saving Labrys to Yosuke and he heads after them. Yosuke finds Labrys in the announcement room where he has to try and shake her out of her delusion. When he does, she refuses to leave, believing she'll never find a place to belong. Labrys attacks Yosuke and he's forced to fight her. After their fight, Labrys' shadow reveals herself and Labrys denies her, causing her power to swell. Again, Yosuke fights a version of Labrys and defeats her. The shadow falls silent and Yosuke runs to help Labrys. She's lamenting her weakness, saying it would be better if she was scrapped. Yosuke once again has to collect himself to face her. He tells her about Saki, and about how because of what happened he felt isolated. He thought nobody could understand how he felt after she was killed. He continues saying how that wasn't true and that even if people haven't experienced the same things, they can still understand each other. He credits his strength to his friends who helped him through his troubles. Labrys tells him that she doesn't have that. Yosuke says to her that she must have had that at some point. She breaks down at these words, surely thinking back to 024. Yosuke then offers that they can be friends and says that she wouldn't be out of place when they've already got a friend who's a shadow. He even tells her that Aigis is worried for her. With all that said, Labrys accepts. She's finally not alone anymore. She's able to accept her shadow and awaken to her persona, Ariadne. Labrys smiles the brightest smile Yosuke's ever seen, and they head to the TV world's exit where she meets everyone else. For a moment, Yosuke is cautious of Mitsuru when she uses language that makes it sound like Labrys is an object to her, but that's quickly cleared up. At the news that they have no intention of containing Labrys, everyone's happy, but Labrys is more confused. To ease this, Mitsuru tells her that she's done nothing wrong. Labrys replies, saying that she'd pretty much made peace with being sealed away again after making friends. Just as Labrys is thanking Yosuke, someone hacks her, taking over her body. Yeah, it's me, Nazuki. Not that that's really important at this very moment. Labrys is forced into combat. For one final time, Yosuke fights her, and for one final time, she is defeated. The hacker only wanted to see the strength of the Persona users for himself, so he just leaves after the battle, releasing Labrys from his control. They all depart the TV world, and Yosuke wonders if this is the last time they'll see Labrys because the shadow operatives are leaving town. However, when Labrys awakes, she demands that they say farewell to everyone. She calls Yosuke and tells him and everyone else to meet. The next day, they all meet up in the shopping district, where Labrys talks about how she decided to join the shadow operatives to track down the culprit. When the time comes to say goodbye, instead of doing a handshake, Yosuke high-fives Labrys. Cool. As the car leaves town, Labrys waves the whole way out, even past where the investigation team could possibly see. And that's it for Yosuke's story with her. What I really like with this one is how Yosuke interacts with her. It's jokingly flirty some of the time, and I find it kinda cute, especially because Labrys entertains him. There's quite a few lines from Yosuke to Labrys that I find memorable. Another thing I like here is how Yosuke handles finding out what she really is, and how he makes it right. It's something that just doesn't happen in any other character's story. None of the other ones have hesitation there. It makes this version of the story much more unique. After that happens, I really like Yosuke's motivation to right things with her, even fighting an uphill battle against her sister. Speaking of, Aigis is our final character I'll be talking about in this video. Her story covers similar ground to Yosuke, so this will be pretty short. As the shadow operatives begin their mission to stop the one behind Labrys' theft? Kidnapping? Whatever term is more correct for her in the sealed state. As they prepare, Aigis has to ready herself for the possibility that she'll have to destroy her sister. Of course, she wants to avoid this at all costs, so she brings it up to Mitsuru, who clarifies that if they can save Labrys, they will. Aigis deeply hopes that she'll be able to help Labrys and have her become an irreplaceable part of her life. Before they all enter the TV, Mitsuru suggests that maybe one of them should stay behind, and Aigis immediately rejects this idea, pretty much demanding that she go in. When she eventually encounters the student council president, she's 100% sure that she's Labrys. However, she runs away, and Aigis' pursuit is blocked by one of the invisible walls. When they meet again later in the tournament, Labrys falls over in pain while trying to recollect her past. Aigis catches her and recalls some of Labrys' memories. Touching her somehow awaken the dormant memories inside of her. Aigis can't really analyze them at that moment, though, because the memories are a bit distorted. One memory that flashed in her mind did leave an impression, though. The sight of the ocean. Labrys runs away, and before Aigis can follow, her definitely real shadow appears to taunt her. That's not really important right now, though. The next time they meet, it's under the same exact circumstances as in the Yosuke route. It's just that she enters through the door instead of breaking down the wall. Aigis jumps into action, blocking Labrys' shadow axe swing. While doing this, she tells Labrys that she has to accept the truth, no matter how painful it is, because that's the only way she'll have any kind of future. Once again, the shadow takes Labrys and runs to the roof, where Aigis and Yosuke follow and are once again forced to fight. The interaction is exactly the same, but this time Aigis is the winner. When she returns to the announcement room, she's forced to fight Labrys, who refuses to accept reality. During their fight, Aigis comes to understand exactly what Labrys went through. In Aigis' own words, each strike felt like tearing out a piece of my own heart. Soon after their battle, Aigis fights the shadow who had been empowered by Labrys' rejection. She subdues her and then goes to help Labrys. She tells her about how Yosuke wanted to apologize for not being there for her, and how he invited her to a party he'll be throwing after all this is over. Aigis also tells Labrys about her encounter with her definitely real shadow, and how she was able to overcome it. She continues by saying that the painful truth of what the shadow said will remain as long as she lives, but as long as she has friends to support her, she can handle it. Aigis encourages Labrys, saying that as long as she looks for someone, she'll be able to find one who will support her. Aigis offers herself as one of such people. This is when Labrys is able to awaken to her persona in this route. Once again, Labrys is able to find that everyone who came into the TV world is willing to be there for her. From here on, pretty much everything is exactly the same as in the Yosuke route, so I'll just skip to after the farewell. While the limo is leaving town, after Labrys stops her near-endless wave goodbye, she gazes at the sky in wonder of the vibrant blue. Aigis thinks about the memory of the ocean and realizes that she had seen the same sight once. Not only that, but she also knows about Labrys' wish. Aigis tells Labrys that it was thanks to her wish that she was drawn to that pier to be able to meet Makoto and become so close to him. Aigis thanks her for her wish that made it possible for her to find happiness. Labrys tears up, now knowing that her wish she made so long ago was able to help someone. She shares her goal of meeting the girl with Aigis, who promises to help her in her search. That entire last scene has to be one of my favorite moments in the game, only really matched by Labrys' wish itself. Bringing back the wish and tying it into Aigis' story so naturally makes for one of the most beautiful character moments in the series. I really love the way that Aigis is dedicated to saving Labrys no matter what, and beyond the tournament how she's dedicated to helping her. Of all the routes in Arena, aside from Labrys', this one is my favorite, hands down. This was a very difficult video to make for me. I approached it from so many different angles before finally settling on this. I'm ultimately pretty happy with how it turned out, and I hope you like it. Labrys is just such a great character that I never really see anyone talk about. I pretty much forced myself to make this video because of that. I hope that she returns in another game at some point, but honestly it wouldn't bother me much if she didn't because what we already have is one of the best character arcs in the series. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.